All right, guys, we are live. Welcome to hour 4 of 24 hours of broadcasting. To celebrate Community Manager Appreciation Day 2016. This is the 7th year as a community. We've all been celebrating community management. It stems back to Jeremiah Owang, who 7 years ago suggested that the fourth Monday of every January would just take a minute to pause and appreciate community managers and reflect on our industry. And so this is the 4th year that we've gathered all together to do a 24-hour broadcast. It's the 3rd year we've worked with sponsors and a committee to do awards. This year we had over 300 different nominees for a whole bunch of different awards that Dom will be talking about later in the broadcast. And with that, I just want to introduce us here in the studio. Hi, my name is Brew. I'm the director of Awesome with Be the Change Revolutions, as well as co-producer here, or co-producer at My Community Manager with Sherry.
Hey everybody, I'm Sherry Brody, and I'm the community manager at Magento, as well as co-producing Hanging Out with Brew.
Hey guys, I'm Barack here up in Seattle. I am the founder of Amplify Yourself, and I'm also the community manager at Meshfire. And here's Dom.
Hey guys, I'm Dom. I am a community manager, project manager with Be the Change Revolutions, as well as co-host with Sherry and Brew for My Community Manager. Really excited. Just want to give a quick shout out to all of our sponsors that make this possible. Not only do they have their names and logos right behind Sherry and Brew in the HQ down in LA, but just giving a quick shout out to Salesforce, Community Cloud, Higher Logic, Online Community Results, Sprout Social, Vanilla Forums, Zoomf. We have communitymanagement.org, socialmedia.org, Amplify Yourself, Igloo Intranet, as well as Meshfire. And like Bruce said, they also help make the awards possible. And in 7 hours, actually, so stay tuned. In 7 hours, we'll be giving away the first of those awards. So we'll throw it on over to you guys.
Fantastic. So this panel is called Debunking the Myths of Facebook Fatigue. And Jan, we'll turn things over to you.
Well, thanks, Brew. Good morning to you all. We've got an amazing panel today. We've got from left to right, we have Andrew Gerrard in London. We have James Barisic in Brittany. And we have Scott Gould right across the channel in Exeter. And I'm Jan Guvenek. I'm the CEO and founder of Visionary Marketing, and I'm based in Paris, France. We get to talk about this Facebook fatigue phenomenon. I mean, actually, I went back to some of my friends on Twitter, and I found out that some had already written about this in 2008. That's barely 4 years after Facebook was created and launched. But more recently, actually, a few weeks ago, I came across that post, which I'm actually entering in the chat box in LinkedIn, and the post is called "Are We Entering the Age of Facebook Fatigue?" It seems like a recurring theme on the internet, and apparently there are numbers about this. Active usage of Facebook, according to the Global Web Index, GWI, dropped by 8% in 2014. So it's more a drop in usage than volumes, in fact. So it's more, okay, it's the same number of users are actually still increasing, but fewer people using it. Basically due to, well, more competition from other competing social media like Pinterest, Tumblr, and Instagram. Most importantly, it seems like from GWI results that a lot of the drop in usage is coming from teenagers using it less than they used to. Now, this question about Facebook fatigue was raised during one of our courses. James and I were facilitating this course for GEM, Grenoble École de Management in Paris, and there was this question by one of our students, is Facebook usage dropping, and we wanted to find out, you know, with our own survey, and James launched a survey. When was that? 3 months ago, in US, well, amongst US, UK, and French audiences, so that we could actually get the numbers straight from the horse's mouth. So, James, I'm going to hand over to you so that you can present some of the results, and then whenever I find that, you know, that we can actually stop, then I'll turn to Scott and Andrew to comment on each of your results. If needs be, I have the PDF at the ready and I can share it, so just let me know. And I'll hand over to you. And we can't hear you, so you
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can do that.
Fantastic. I got very confused by someone who works in technology by what is clearly a physical button. I apologise. So we started an online survey a few weeks ago, just towards the end of October. About Facebook fatigue. The question had come up during one of the lectures that we run. We were running at Grenoble École de Management, as Jan said, and we decided to try and update the numbers. And what we found was to us quite interesting, because we had the anecdotal stuff and we had some older stuff, but we didn't have anything that was really up to date. So we asked a very limited number of questions, and we asked a bit of demographic data so that we could play with those. There is an article that Jan will share, or I think the guys at CMAD have also shared on their Twitter feed. You can find it on my Twitter feed at JamesMB. And Jan could also share that PDF. That would be fantastic. Cool. So we started off with a very simple question: have you taken a break of any description? And the answer to that, as you can see, was about almost 60% of people had. We had quite a good response rate. So we had 530, I think it was 530 odd people who'd responded. I'm hoping someone's going to tell me that everyone can see the PDF, aren't they? I'm hoping. Someone can see. Can Scott? I can see you. Can you wave if you can see the PDF?
Can you all see the PDF?
Yeah, that's cool. just being slightly concerned there. Now, so yeah, we asked quite simply whether or not people had taken any sort of break from Facebook, and we came up with this 60% figure. Now, the second question, we had a sort of sub-series of questions. We wanted to find out more of those from those people who had. So if we can just squeeze down to the second question, and we'll make all this available. We'll share the PDF online. We asked people what sort of break that they took. So whether or not the intention was it was permanent and final when they stuck to it, whether they thought it was permanent but then changed their mind, or whether it was some form of temporary break. Now, what Jan just said was quite interesting, is that we have this 8% drop in active users. It's always quite satisfying when your figures tie up with other people's figures. So what we found was, on our survey, 8.9% of people said that they had what was described as a permanent and final break from Facebook. Now, what we don't know, of course, and this is the reason why we have to look into these things, is how many of those actually deleted their profile and how many think they might have done, but the profile's actually still there. And of course, that's the reason why we can see a potential drop in active users, but actually increasing in numbers. So a lot of people that think they may have left may not have actually left in a true sense. But we had almost 20% of people deciding that they were taking a permanent break. Whether or not they followed through on that was another issue, and the rest were taking some kind of temporary break. And you'll see there that it's about 44-ish% of people were looking at taking a break under a week. So it's quite a thought through process of getting to that point where actually you've had enough and you want to walk away. If we whiz down to question 3, again, this was.
Maybe we can take a break right now, James, and turn to Scott.
Sure.
And ask him, Scott, have you been able to probe your friends and social media friends? Mostly, they're quite numerous. So, have you found out that maybe some of them were taking a break from Facebook and possibly other social media, or is the thrill still there? What's your opinion about that?
My observations completely agree with the data that James, is presenting right now. Thank you for that. Thank you for presenting it, James. And I look forward to hearing more of the research. Observationally, most people that I know have massively decreased their use of Facebook. Do take Facebook breaks or Facebook fasts. There's different phrases that are being used to describe it. And the ones who do use it, they seem to be changing their behavior. Many of them use it as a news feed to read and post less. So my wife, for instance, is a great example of this. She will flick through, see what people are saying, see what's going on with her friends, but she hardly makes a status update on Facebook at all anymore. So it certainly seems that people are decreasing their output, decreasing their usage, and really considering a more scaled back approach. And I think some of them do seem to be fleeing to other social networks, but I'm sure we'll touch on that as we go on. But for now, my experience certainly is that people are finding this to be true. Not just with Facebook, also with Twitter, it seems. But I'll hand back to you there, Jan.
Andrew, we've all been, the four of us actually, have been involved in the famous Like Minds conferences, maybe 5 to 6 years ago. At that time, there was really, the amount of usage on social media was just amazing, and the amount of sharing, and everything was really, really thrilling at the time. What is your feeling about this? Can you see this thrill going down again, or as others have seen, or do you think it is just surface tension, and when we dig deeper, then social media is still very much alive?
I think there are a number of points there. But firstly, I'd just like to echo Scott's thoughts and to say thank you to James and to you, Jan, for producing this valuable research. I think this is an important part of how we understand people using social media, and it's great that we can actually see some empirical evidence to suggest that that people's habits and behaviors are actually changing in how they use social media, and Facebook specifically. Scott used a phrase there, scaled back approach, which I think is very, very relevant to how a lot of people are now starting to think about Facebook and their usage. Certainly, anecdotally, a large number of my contacts and people within my network have taken breaks. I think most of us have probably got at least one or two of our contacts, if not more, who said, I'm going to take a break from social media. I'm going on holiday for 2 weeks, and I'm going to put all my digital devices away, and I'm going to be off the grid is quite a common phrase, or kind of common thing that people seem to take on board. And I think very much we're seeing people taking a more measured approach to how they use Facebook, and also as Scott mentioned, Twitter and social media in general. And people are starting to pick and choose a lot more carefully about what they do and how they do it on these networks. I think we are seeing a shift in the way that people's behavior
on Facebook and social media in general is starting to impact on what they do and what they say. And brand managers in particular and marketeers need to pay attention to this, because it's going to be an important shift in how they actually address those audiences and how they engage with them for the future.
Thank you, Andrew. Scott, I would like to get back to this maybe decreasing passion or enthusiasm for Facebook. Is it something which is just pertinent to Facebook itself, or is it social media in general? We've heard, you know, there's loads of changes coming on with Twitter at the moment. Most of their managers being sacked. The amount of sharing on Twitter since they actually decided to take off the number of Twitter accounts has gone down by 11%. Actually, what I saw on my blog is that since they started doing this is not 11%. We lost something like 80% of our sharing through on Twitter. So talk about Twitter fatigue here. It's quite impressive. So what do you think? Are we at a turning point in the history of web and social media here, or is it just on the surface?
It's funny, isn't it? Because, you know, we talk about the history of the web, and yet still this is all very young in terms of the grand scheme of things. It's funny how the social media very much seems to be a microcosm of human community. The stats seem to suggest that 2008 through to 2010 or 11 were the boom years for social media. Since then, sign-ups to social media sites have slowed down. But over the last year or so, we've seen a lot of new social networks gaining a lot more traction. Snapchat's becoming a lot more popular. Vine, Periscope, Beamy, all these video-based ones are now becoming more popular. And I think, and it seems to be that David Spinks of Community Manager Hub, you know, has the same thought on it. He posted on it recently on his blog, that people seem to be searching for community. That's very relevant that we're on Community Manager Appreciation Day, and people are finding less community in Facebook and less community in Twitter, so they're going to newer and therefore less congested social networks to find that community. Facebook and Twitter have become very congested places, particularly Twitter. I've taken a Twitter hiatus, come back over the recent months, and found that the interaction is nothing compared to what the interaction used to be 4 years ago. Same thing on Facebook. It does seem that they've become congested places, and people are looking for community, and so they're flocking to some of these new social networks. Interestingly, on the piece that David Spinks wrote, he was talking about how Facebook group usage is up 50%. So it does seem that, again, you know, the group mechanism, the community mechanism of Facebook is increasing, but the organic level of community, just from a news feed, seems to be decreasing, and so people are looking for those greener pastures. That certainly would be my take on it as well, and I think that explains why we're finding people flocking to newer social networks, and of course ones that are video, because it's a more perhaps authentic rendering of ourselves at the same time. So that would be my take on it, Jan. I don't know what your take on it is.
That's a good point, Scott. I like this idea of going back to the basics of community, and then people actually trying to share. And yeah, I think it's always been my point that social media was used wrongly in the past 5 years, mostly due to the flocking of brands coming onto Facebook and being new to it and not understanding the community feeling of social media in Facebook and others. They have all tried to bypass the rules of word-of-mouth marketing and of the you know, the basics of sharing and pleasing people before trying to please themselves. They all jumped onto advertising, which I think was also a request by all the shareholders of all these social media platforms, and to an extent the more shareholders of social media platforms are asking for immediate returns, the more they're shooting themselves in the foot, because I think they are in fact responsible for the decrease in usage and the decrease in interest. Now, I'm going to hand over to James, who's been very silent in the past 5 minutes, and maybe you could take your point on comment on this, James. Plus, I would have like to ask you another question about what you have been able to notice in terms of differences between all three areas which you have probed in your survey: US, UK, France. Have you found any significant differences, and how do you explain them?
It's interesting you should mention that. I've got the slide that you've got up at the moment, the question that you've got up at the moment. I've got some interesting numbers on. But before I get to that, just keep everyone on tenterhooks and listening. Just to go back to what everyone's been saying, I think I think there is an issue with Facebook and Twitter in particular, and I think actually it comes back to something that quite a lot of us. I remember having this conversation at Like Minds back in the day when social media was all black and white. That there will come a point when the networks are so big that it will become more obvious more obvious as to who actually knows how to create communities and create networks on them, and those who are doing it because actually the networks are quite small and therefore it's easier to corral people. And I think we've reached that point. And I think one of the reasons why, leaving aside the technological reasons why, for instance, the video sharing sites and the live video sites are becoming more popular, one of the reasons why there has potentially been this shift away is I think there are some people who are new to community management and marketing online who thought, well, we'll go into push into Twitter and push into Facebook, and then they've actually found it's quite difficult to do because things are scaled and because it's harder to be heard unless you're doing something that's genuinely quite interesting. So I think that's one of the other factors. So we've got the technological side where new technology will allow us to do new things, but I think we've also got the scaling side where in the past being an amateur on a smaller network is always feasible. If you've got a huge network, to create traction on that's actually quite hard. Now, if we can go back to that slide, the one that I think you've got up at the moment, because which is question 2, I believe it's the sort of Facebook break that people were thinking of taking. This was actually the first point or actually not the first point, it's actually the major point where we've started to see big differences in how different demographics have different views on Facebook and how they're taking the break. So when we broke the figures down, one of the demographics we looked at was where people came from. And when you break those figures down, what you find is that in the UK and France, people are much more likely to get to a breaking point and think they're quite happy to live outside Facebook than they are in the US. So in the UK and France, the people choosing the permanent option, so the break was permanent and final, or the break was meant to be permanent but I went back. So that initial mindset of, okay, I've had enough completely, rather than I'm just going to take a break and come back to it. In the UK and France, that was 24 to 25% of people. So a quarter of people that decided to go decided that they'd really had enough and they were going once and for all. In the States, that was 9%. And that's quite a huge difference. That's 2.5 times. You're 2.5 times more likely to get to that stage of I've had enough and I'm walking away in the UK and France than you are in the States. Now there may be all sorts of underlying reasons to do with communications, to do with the consumer side of Facebook, that people think actually there is a benefit to them. There might be other reasons where they think actually I need to be on Facebook. But on the surface of it, and that would be something fascinating to look into in further research, but on the surface of it, people in the UK and France are much more likely to say, right, that's it, away. Not just I'm having a break from this in a bit of time, but we'll switch it off.
How can we explain this? I mean, is it because we are more of Luddites in the UK and France, or is it something to do with being Europeans and a bit more skeptical? I don't know, critical.
I don't know. It would be interesting to see what the hooks are, and partly because we weren't expecting. Partly because we weren't expecting that result. We didn't really probe that any further. But there is clearly a stark difference. It does look as if it may be cultural on in some aspect. Why, I don't know. I could postulate as to why, but then I might be guiding people in answers in further research, because actually it's quite an interesting. I think there are things that underlie this question, that are quite fundamental to how people use Facebook and how much they think it's really tied into their lives, which are quite fascinating. And the fact that clearly there is this feeling in the UK and France amongst people that have left. Now they're either pushed to a point, or they think I can walk away from this and it won't have that much of a difference. I don't know which of those two it is.
Maybe we can turn to Andrew and try and pick his brains about that. And Andrew, do you think is this something which is really pertinent to France and England only, or is that something that we'll be able to find in other countries as well, maybe in Asia?
I don't know. I mean, like James, I'm a little bit reluctant to speculate on the reasons for the significant discrepancy, other than perhaps to suggest rather facetiously that we've got better things to do with our lives than come back to Facebook. Once we've taken a break, perhaps it's because that once people have taken a break, they realise that actually Facebook and social media generally isn't as an important part of their lives as perhaps we thought it might be in the early days, and that people are looking for a better balance in how they use social networking in general and Facebook specifically, or perhaps it comes back to the fact that the value in Facebook and its relevancy to users has diminished somewhat. I'm going to echo one of the points that Scott made earlier, actually, about people seeking community. And maybe it's perhaps because people find that Facebook, superficially at least, through its news feeds, doesn't provide the same sense of relevancy and community that people are looking for, that they move away and they gravitate more towards areas that are going to provide that level of relevancy, engagement, and community purpose. So hence, Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, the rise of private networks and so on. And perhaps in Europe, the UK and France, maybe other countries, we find that that sense of community lies elsewhere. So we're more likely to gravitate away from Facebook than perhaps US users. But as I say, that's purely a piece of speculation that perhaps somebody else, as James suggests, might want to research and provide some facts based on that.
Absolutely, I think this is a good starting point for digging deeper into this issue of Facebook fatigue and social media fatigue in general. Okay, James, maybe we can jump to question 3 now.
Can I just whiz back onto question two for just 1 second?
Sure.
One of the other things that we found on this, and it again, we don't know the reasons why, but when you split that down into male and female, you'll find that I'm so tempted to ask the audience as to whether they think that females or males would be more likely to pick a permanent. I'm not going to. What you find is that males are much more likely to, at that initial point, decide that the break is permanent. 28% of males will pick one of those two options: permanent and final, or permanent but I changed my mind. 16% of females. So you do have this you do have this this difference in gender, as well as potentially in different cultures as well.
Interesting.
So let's whiz on to question 3. What became interesting again with these following questions is actually we didn't see much difference when we started breaking the numbers down. It's that question 2 was the key one, where you had cultural differences or whatever, pulling different groups apart. Now, here we asked people to rate the experience. What's very interesting on this to me is that nobody rated it very negative, and you only had 2 people rating it to 1, 2, or 3. So as quite a negative experience. The vast majority of people saw it as positive. Well, you can see the numbers. They pretty much speak for themselves. Everything from that light grey bar up is 5 to 10, and everything from the sort of dark teal down is negative. It's seen, once people do it, it's seen as an overwhelmingly positive thing. Now that then I think feeds through quite nicely to question 4. Perfect segue. I could work on radio. If we go to question 4, we asked people what they did after that, once they'd had their break, what they've done since. So whether they've had other breaks. Now, clearly, you've got that group of people that never came back. So that's one group. But if you look at the rest, and you see that actually the vast majority of people, once they've done it once, are prone to do it again. And you have 56% of people, just over 56% of people, 57% of people, who will now take breaks either occasionally or regularly from Facebook. And you have 23% of people who now have a complete off-grid digital detox thing from all their networks. Now that's pretty much 80% of all people who decide to take some kind of break from Facebook will then do it again regularly. Occasionally, they will do it. So it's clearly a behavior changer. Once you've crossed the Rubicon, once you've decided that you can switch off and live without it, you can carry on doing it. Now that, I think that if there are 2 things that are the key takeaways from this, one is that when you're doing community management, online marketing, 10% of the people that you're marketing to will just go at some point, just permanently leave, and the other is of that 60% of people who will have some kind of break, 80% of them will probably not be there at some stage while you're trying to talk to them. And that's quite important, because we're not talking about just little breaks where someone that didn't log in because they were at work. We're talking about people that are going for a big chunk of conversation, and that must have some impact on the sorts of ways that we create content and try and discuss with people. Yeah, it has to be kind of more semi-permanent rather than instant, because otherwise you're going to be just missing people as they go away. I think this is one of the key things. It is a behavioural change. As soon as you've done it once, that's it. There is no fear in it. You can carry on doing it.
Scott, any comments on this question for?
Personally, I find this glorious because I really think that
you can come again.
Thanks, James. Well, I mean, my own take is that I spent years off Twitter, and I spent, I don't know, a year or 2 years off Facebook. I really think it's very healthy that our society is actually starting to take digital detoxes and getting back to stuff like nature, or even just not nature, just reality. Mindfulness has become, very, very big, and I think it's somewhat indicative of that. Even interesting that, the word detox, is what you elected to use, does seem to suggest something about our health, our diet, and needing to take a break from some of this. Interesting last year how slowly some of the popular Instagram people began to say how a lot of this stuff is fake anyway. It's exaggerated, it's this put-on thing. I read an article recently that said that only 20% of what we read online in terms of social media is actually true to that person. There's this sense of projection and narcissism or solipsism about the whole thing. So I think this is very, very healthy. Now, admittedly, for marketers, there are difficulties. I was definitely one of those people who was heralding social media as being the future and forget about any other form of marketing. It's all about social media. And now we find out, as James has said, if you've got an audience that could be quite transient, look out. But this is probably quite healthy. Social media is not the silver bullet. Nothing is the silver bullet. And let us, take heed and realize that just like any other form of marketing, sometimes it's hit and miss, and we've got to be able to handle that. And I think the brands, again, that succeed, the marketing that succeeds, is that which seems to really seek to build value, seek to build platform, value, support for consumers. Social media is one way that they augment that, but ultimately their user base is engaged, whether it's through social media or through online or not. Those people are engaged, and therefore aren't dependent on them, whether they're on Facebook or not. So that would be my take on it. I'm really encouraged by this research.
In the light of your own Facebook break, because you spent a year or two out of Facebook, did you find that your usage of the tool would actually change, even actually from a business point of view?
Yeah. First of all, I found it very healthy personally, because when you're flicking on it every day, you're just looking at all of this stuff, and you don't even store it necessarily. It's this ambient noise, and it was healthy to get rid of that. I found it healthy to get rid of all of the comparison that goes on with social media. So I converted my Facebook profile into a Facebook page, and now what I do is I will post up questions a few times a week and see how people respond to it, and enjoy discussing things with people that have been my friends and are now my followers or fans, which ultimately are people that I know. This is not some big brand exercise. I'm not a brand. I'm an individual who has some people that happen to know him. And I really enjoy doing that now. I enjoy it being actually a far more communal piece, and I don't have to look at other updates and things. If I want to stay connected to people, I do it through email. Remember that old social network, email, or even phone, or person to person. So that's kind of the way that I roll now.
Old but reliable technology. Andrew, what's your take on this? Have you yourself taken a break from Facebook? Has your usage changed?
Yes, Jan, it has, and I mean, my behaviour has changed, not so much in terms of taking breaks, although I go through periods where I don't use Facebook or social media generally anywhere near as much as I used to. But then at other times, I do, and my usage might actually accelerate, or I might use social media a lot more, really depending on what I'm doing. My approach has changed really, because I've become a lot more relaxed about how I use these social networks and social tools, in that I'm not trying to force something. I'm not trying to shout out and say, look at me, aren't I fantastic, isn't my life wonderful, aren't I the brilliant business person that you all think I am. It's very much more of a relaxed approach, whereby if I feel that I want to post something onto Facebook, then I will, whether it be a photograph of my breakfast, or whether it be some scintillating, stunning business insight into the latest developments in a particular sector or field. I think that once people find a happy medium, once people start to find the balance that suits them, then they're far more comfortable about taking those breaks and about using social media in a far more relevant way to their lives. And this really is the point, I guess, that James was making about once people have tried taking a break, whether it be a short one or whether it be an extended period, people, as James said, have crossed the Rubicon. They're far more comfortable about not using social media than previously. I think a lot of people may previously have thought, oh, I have to be seen on the network. I mean, there's a famous cartoon of two people talking at a water cooler, an office water cooler, and one person is saying to the other, I used to know somebody that used to use social media, but then they stopped and now they simply don't exist. There's very much a case of people thinking that they have to be seen on social media in order for them to feel that they have some kind of value and relevancy to other people. And I don't think that's quite necessarily the case anymore. Certainly in my own personal experience, I don't feel obliged or compelled to use social media in any way near quite the same levels as perhaps I would have done a good number of years ago. And Twitter, I know we've mentioned Twitter a number of times, I think is a useful perspective, because my usage of Twitter has altered radically over the past year to 2 years or so. I don't use it anywhere near as much as I used to, and consequently I find myself using other social networks and tools a lot more frequently, when previously I would have gone straight to Twitter, and that I think is partly due to the fact that there's so much more noise on these social networks now that people feel that that they don't want to be bombarded with all of these messages and these news feeds and so on, so that they're looking in other areas for them.
That's fascinating insights, Andrew and Scott. I mean, I really like the way that you're opening new opportunities, James, for maybe further investigation on social media usage here. I think it's probably not just that we are facing Facebook fatigue, it's just that we are facing a turn in the usage of social media at large. That people are using it for different things, and maybe, from what I understand, from what you're saying, is probably people shying away from the good old personal branding approach that there used to be. Now, I don't see that much happening here on this side of the channel, where, and unfortunately for myself, I think social media presence still bestows a lot of credit on the people actually there and more present than others. And I've actually not used Twitter that much in the past year or so because I haven't had time. But when I saw my following rise by more than 50%, so maybe that boils down to what James was saying about people reading more than talking less, but then reading more, maybe. And then there's people like me writing maybe more than others. I don't know. Okay, so we maybe we can. It's 1:45 now, so we got a quarter of an hour left, and we got 3 questions to go through. So maybe we can move on to question 5, James.
Well, with the final ones, there's not an awful lot for us to learn. These were the demographic questions, so they were primarily there for us to be able to rip apart the top ones. They do show us something of how of the sort of demographics that we will get to answer a survey. It is interesting that it seems to be that females are more likely to help in a survey than males, and also that with the age numbers. So I know some people will be intrigued by the age numbers, but it does actually go back to what a lot of us have been saying for a long time, that with Facebook and also with Twitter, the age demographic of engaged users is actually a lot older than people would imagine.
Does it actually mean that Facebook users are older, James, or that your following is just nothing but old gits?
Well, I'm very pleased that you follow me, but that's not the issue. It is. There have been a number of things that I've done before where the age profile, the age demographic, is completely not what you'd expect. In the sense of you would expect it to be much younger. It was brilliantly explained to me after a training session once that I was expecting to be full of people in their 30s and 40s, and when we went into the room, there was no one in the room under 65, and it was about Facebook privacy, and I asked afterwards. I said that I really wasn't expecting that. That just completely threw me, and it was explained to me in a way that blows the whole thing open and makes it completely obvious. There is a generation of people who throughout their lives have had new technology and just accepted it. I'm not talking about new technology like we've got, like, you get an iPhone or something. I'm talking about telly. I'm talking about fridges. I'm talking about really quite fundamental big stuff. And they've just got on with it. So they had the first personal computers. They had the first calculators, pocket calculators. They had the first computers at work. They had the first TVs. And it's not our generation. We think we're some technological wizards and masterminds that we can accept this new technology. But actually, if you look at most new technology, it's not that new. It's an iteration of something that's gone before. The people that really had to deal with proper breakthroughs in new technology isn't our generation. It's the people that are over 65, and they're the ones that are more likely to be using it and engaging with it because they're not scared of it. In the same way, I suppose, that you have this group of people who we call, or that are deemed to be, I've forgotten the phrase now, digital natives. The digital native things makes no sense to me at all. The people who are the true digital natives, the ones that aren't phased at all by technology, are the people in the 65 and above bracket. So when you see these age demographic bills, they always look older than you'd imagine them to be, and that's because we have kind of this preconceived idea that all these things that are lights and bells and whistles are really interesting to young people, and it's just not the truth. It's not the fact. None of it is never borne out.
There's a few explanations to this as well. I mean, obviously there is a bias on the kind of people that you've asked the questions to, because
sure,
you have a certain following, and your following have the same kind of following, and this is obviously creating a bias. The average age for our populations is about 41 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, if you take any large population for anything, you will always tend to find something which is more or less similar to the same age groups. And thirdly, I think you're right. Many sociologists, including Antonio Casilli, there's Jacques Follon as well in Belgium. Casilli is Italian, but is based in France. These two have carried out quite a few studies about so-called digital natives and showing that, in fact, they didn't exist. So maybe this is something we can tackle for next year's CMAD, debunking the myth of digital natives. Now, going back to the last question, maybe I see you've probed people in Afghanistan. That's brilliant.
Well, we asked people to say where they were from, primarily so that again we could tie down and start looking at different countries and how they do stuff. It was it was much wider than I was expecting it to be. If you go upwards a bit for me, yeah, we had Azerbaijan and we had Afghanistan and other places. There are, I think there are a number of reasons for that to do with our respective followings. I know I've got some followers from some stuff I've done in Russia and the CIS before, and so it was much wider. But again, it's always useful to look at these things and just to see. It was shared in a number of different places, so it wasn't just the normal suspects, and everything that you put out, it doesn't actually matter how focused it is. We could have tried to focus it quite heavily on one place. You would always get a much wider spread than you would otherwise have imagined. There were some places that I expected to be a bit more. We didn't have as many people from Australia as I thought we probably would, and of course you also have the issue that the survey was in English. So we were inevitably cutting out some people, but there we are. That was our first one. Now, what I would ask, and this isn't just me advertising my interest feed. If you could follow me and also Jan. And Jan is at YGOURVEN. I would like to follow this up with some other research, and the kinds of people that are watching this right now are exactly the kind of people that will be able to help spread the word. And whatever we do, we will share with you as well, so that we can better understand the sorts of people that are using the networks, how they're using them, and so on. So if you could follow me, if you want to ping me a tweet, that would be fantastic, at JamesMB. I hope the thing works, and that would be great, because at the end of the day, we know anecdotally what we know, but when we actually have the numbers, we can do much more interesting things, and all of us can learn more about how these communities operate.
Thank you, James. We're kindly requested to adjourn this meeting at 9:55, so we've got 2 minutes to go. So that leaves us 1 minute for Scott and 1 minute for Andrew to conclude. I would just for myself, I think there is this study has been very, very interesting and has shown new ways and great perspective for the future in terms of research. I think we have maybe when you next come to Paris, James, we have to sit and think about how we can conduct this survey and take it a step forward. I think there's probably also a case here to broaden the scope and take it beyond Facebook and include Twitter, as I said, and other social media platforms. So over to you guys, Andrew and Scott. You've got now a little bit less than 1 minute to conclude.
Okay, thank you very much, Jan. Thank you, James. Great to be on the call this morning. The one quick thing that I would add is that I would be really interested to see further research on younger generations. I know, James, you just talked about the age thing and digital natives, millennials in particular. I think some further research on their usage of social media and other social networks and tools, bearing in mind that many of them don't use Facebook in anywhere near the same levels as the middle age or older age bracket. So that's a request really perhaps to you, James and Jan. Next time we reconvene, can we see some data on younger generations? I think that would be really fascinating for the future of social network and media usage.
Makes
thanks,
perfect
guys.
sense. We'll have to ask James to stop asking all his old gits to answer his questions.
You're the only one that speaks to me, Jan. I've got no choice.
I'll just pitch in and say thank you very much and goodbye.
All right, excellent.
Thank you all. So we're on time. And over to you, my community manager. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right, so everybody tuning in, we'll see you at the next panel. So thanks a lot.